So the left has changed the language. Now, this has been going on for a long time. If you've been paying attention, it's been going on for years. It's gotten a lot worse recently. Now, how have they changed the language? So basically what's going on now, you look at the situation with the vaccine, for example, right? You know, somebody that was quote-unquote anti-vax before was somebody that was just completely against vaccinations, right? Whether it was polio, whether it was chicken pox, whatever. They were just completely against it. They didn't want to get it. They didn't want anybody getting it or think that anybody should get it, right? But now we have a situation where somebody who's vaccinated but feels like people should have the choice whether to get it or not is now quote-unquote anti-vax. Even though that's really not what anti-vax is supposed to mean. But they want to demonize people who don't go along with what the mainstream narrative is and what the powers that be want. So they use the language, they change it, they demonize those people. And so you don't even want to hear whatever argument they're making because they're already branded anti-vax. So everything that comes out of their mouth, you're automatically thinking, you're saying to yourself, oh, this is somebody that doesn't believe in vaccines. So they demonize you, right? This has been going on for years because look at something like when Trump was running for the election, for example, right? And if somebody was pro-immigration, for example, but they were anti-illegal immigration, what would they be called? They'd be called racist, right? Because then they're automatically demonized. You'd say, oh, these people are evil people. They don't have a right to opinion. And again, it just goes back to the language. When you brand somebody that they're not, it basically just completely discredits anything that they say, right? So they might actually have a valid point that if you heard it, you'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But because they've already been branded as a racist or as somebody that's anti-vax, then you don't even want to listen to them. So it's the left's way of just suppressing any other thought than their own. Now, they've also been doing this with the Transformers, for example, right? Take a situation with the transgender people, right? I call them the Transformers, right? I don't care if that offends anybody. I think it's funny. But the thing is this. You look at a situation where somebody says, well, you know what? I don't really care what anybody else does. If you want to pretend to be a woman or whatever, that's on you. I don't care. Right? But the fact that they don't want to play along, that somebody would say, well, I don't think they're a female. I don't think they're a biological female just because they say they are, just because they had surgery. Now, that person is deemed as what? They're deemed as a bigot. They're deemed as transphobic, right? So you just eliminate anything that they have to say, whether it's logical or not, right? And you just brand them as that, and you cast them to the side. That way there's no other thought. Again, their thought of their own. Now, that again is just all about control and going along with what the agenda is. You got to understand, for these people, this is, not only is it about power, this is a religion to them, right? It's just like if you ever dealt with somebody who's very, very extremely religious, anytime you question anything, they get upset and they don't want to hear it. They just do not want to hear it. And I'm talking about people that are extremely, extremely religious, right? They just don't want to hear it. It's the same thing. These people have replaced God and the church with the left, with socialism, with communism, whatever you want to call it. That's what they've replaced it. It's the same thinking. You know, it's the same cult-like thinking. There's really no difference. The parallels are there if you're open to actually looking into it and actually seeing it. You know, stuff like this is a really slippery slope, you know. I'll get back to the Transformer thing. Now, they're calling people transphobic, right? Because you don't agree with that, with characterizing people as something that they're not, right? What's the next step? Let's say, for example, and just might be an extreme, you might think this is like an extreme example. We're not too far off from it. Let's say you're a heterosexual male and you don't want to date somebody because they're transgender. We're going to get to the point where they're going to say you're transphobic because that person is a woman. Where do we draw the line? The whole thing about feminism makes me laugh too, because these things are diametrically opposed to each other. You can't out of one side of your mouth talk about women this, women that, and then you're saying, well, anybody could be a woman. That doesn't make sense. So you mean to tell me that you want to see more women get whatever position it is, for example, right? And so they could just hire somebody that was born a biological man, went through their whole life as a biological man, and now they get hired because they're a woman, but they're not really a woman. And you think that that's the same thing, right? So these people are hypocrites. They talk out of both sides of their mouths. My thing is, I understand the world we're living in. People are scared to get canceled, and people are scared of, people being branded as something. But if people don't stand up and correct them when they try to change the language, this is going to continue. We're going to be looking at that movie Demolition Man. It's going to be just like that. We're not too far off from it, So people have to stand up and they have to fight back. They can't be quiet and just let these people get away with this. Because again, it's all about control and only having what the mainstream media and what the mainstream narrative is, what the left says. That's all it's about. It's about one thought. These people are not tolerant. They claim to be the most tolerant. They are not. They're not tolerant of anybody else that has any other views, and they're not tolerant of anybody who has even any other opinion or to even question, to even say, hey, you know what? I don't think this is really making too much sense to me. They don't want any discourse, nothing. They just want everybody to just fall in line. So now they've redefined medical misinformation, and we know there is such a thing as medical misinformation, right? If you say, all right, let's say somebody says, I'm going to take this Advil and this Advil is going to make me fly. Obviously, that's medical misinformation. That's not going to happen, right? But they've changed the definition. So we actually have real things that happen, with these vaccines, potentially, right? And somebody will question it or say, hey, this is a possibility. They'll say, it's medical misinformation. We know that's not. But again, people are not allowed, when it comes to this, people are not allowed to question anything. And before it was about, they talk about my body, my choice, they make that whole argument when it comes to abortion, but then it doesn't apply to this because, so they pick and choose, it's like a menu. They can pick and choose, how they feel about certain things. But, that's very dangerous. We talk about medical misinformation. You look at things that people said 6 months ago, right? And they got banned and they got flagged. And now it's coming out. The studies are coming out. They're like, oh, yeah, that was right. But how is that? So how was it medical misinformation? It's just that the powers that be didn't want any of that information out there before, so they suppressed it. Now they're starting to slowly admit certain things. And again, they're going to brand people as bigots, as racists, as anti-vaxxers, as transphobic. It goes on and on and on. And again, like I said, the reason why they do that is once somebody is branded as one of those things, then anything that comes out of their mouth, nobody even has to acknowledge or listen to. This is all part of that game, to discredit everyone, to get only one thought. That's just one man's opinion.